For 10 years, we as moviegoers were treated to both the rise and fall of the DC Extended Universe, or DCEU for short. The rise began with the release of Man of Steel in 2013, which was directed by Zack Snyder. It marked the start of an ambitious plan to create a shared cinematic universe featuring iconic DC comic characters. This was followed by Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice and Suicide Squad. Those both expanded the universe and introduced key characters, but these were both met with less than stellar reviews. Over the years, we would see success like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam, as well as James Gunn's brilliant take on the Suicide Squad. There were some mixed-reviewed films like Justice League, Wonder Woman 1984, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and The Flash. The DCEU couldn't compete with Marvel's cinematic universe, as tons of these movies were failing to connect with critics and audiences. So, in November of 2022, James Gunn and Peter Safran were appointed co-CEOs of DC Studios. This marks a new chapter for DC comic films. So let's jump back to the late 2000s. While Marvel would have their X-Men franchise, Fantastic Four films, and get the MCU off the ground with Iron Man, DC would be releasing their own films as well. We had already seen Nolan's standalone trilogy for Batman, but other failed properties such as Catwoman and Superman Returns weren't doing so hot. While Constantine did well at the box office, it unfortunately received mixed reviews from critics, and Watchmen was divisive among critics and its fans. In 2010, Warner Brothers, along with the DC Entertainment and Legendary Pictures, would release Jonah Hex. This movie is a perfect choice for this subject matter because it faced numerous issues that contributed to its critical and commercial failure. The movie suffered from a troubled production, including significant script rewrites and directorial changes, which led to a very disjointed and incoherent narrative. Critics and audiences would criticize the film for its muddled plot and lack of direction, which ultimately led to its poor box office performance and a tarnished reputation in the realm of comic book adaptations. So today, we're gonna find out just what the happened to Jonah Hex.
5 coffins. Sure you don't need 8?
To understand this movie, you must understand a little about the comic book character and his background. He first appeared in the early 1970s and was created by writer John Albano and artist Tony DeZuniga. Jonah Hex is a scarred bounty hunter and gunslinger known for his anti-heroic demeanor and distinctive facial disfigurement. Set in the American Old West, Hex's stories often explore themes of justice, revenge, and redemption against the backdrop of a lawless frontier. He gained popularity for his complex morality and willingness to operate outside conventional hero norms. Over the decades, he would appear in various comic series and adaptations. So in 2000, 20th Century Fox would develop an hour-long TV movie for Jonah Hex. Akiva Goldsman and Robert Zapia were producing, but the project was never fully fleshed out. In 2007, Warner Brothers held the film rights and wanted to make a film based on Jonah Hex. This time, Akiva would work with Andrew Lazar as producers on the project. Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor, of Crank fame, wrote the screenplay and were hired to direct. However, creative differences emerged, leading to Neveldine and Taylor's departure as directors on the film. Warner Brothers would devise the idea of hiring Andy Fickman or McG as a director on this movie. But in January of 2009, the studio would bring in Jimmy Hayward to direct. He was a former Pixar animator with only one directorial credit, Horton Hears a Who.
Is everything okay down there?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the one holding the spec.
I'm the one holding this back. I'm the one holding this back.
The casting process was not without its challenges. One notable issue arose with the initial choice of actor for the lead role. Originally, Thomas Jane was in talks for the role and had even begun preparing for it, but creative differences and scheduling conflicts prevented anything moving forward. This departure would lead to both Matthew McConaughey and Emile Hirsch to be considered for the role. Eventually, Josh Brolin was offered and accepted it. Additionally, Megan Fox's Lila, Jonah Hex's love interest, also garnered some attention. While Fox brought her star power to the film, her inclusion sparked debate among fans and critics regarding the suitability of her role and the dynamics of her character's relationship with Jonah Hex. Supporting roles also included John Malkovich as Quentin Turnbull, Hex's vengeful adversary, and Michael Fassbender as Burke, Turnbull's ruthless henchman. Will Arnett was also hired to act in this as Lieutenant Grass. However, he was very keen to appear in it, mainly because he would so rarely be offered a straight dramatic role. Maybe this role helped him land a good balance of comedy and drama in BoJack Horseman, but we'll never know.
President seems to think that you're special. Magic, even. To see about that.
Filming began in April 2009 in Louisiana. Because of Hayward's lack of experience with live-action productions, it would contribute to clashes with the studio and creative team. As a result of this, Francis Lawrence was brought in to handle reshoots, which would only add to the film's production complexities. During this production, Josh Brolin could only shave off half of his beard to accommodate his prosthetic on one side of his face. So, for several months, he would walk around with only half a beard. He also wasn't able to eat while wearing these prosthetics. And since we're on the topic of it, if you look closely, you'll notice John Malkovich wears a prosthetic nose as well. Initially, Brolin hated the script. He would, however, change his mind as he grew to like the tongue-in-cheek tone.
Just jealous of your good looks, boy.
The heavy metal band Mastodon scored the film, as well as composer John Powell. Mastodon's music added a distinctive and intense energy to the film, reflecting the harsh landscapes and morally complex characters. Because the film underwent reshoots and re-edits, Powell had other commitments to other films and left. He was replaced with Marco Beltrami, who had a different appreciation for the music. The first soundtrack Mastodon had recorded was written for scenes that were scrapped during reshoots. Beltrami had Mastodon work on a new score, to their frustration. It contrasted the original version and was considered more restrained and subtle. On June 29, 2010, 2 weeks after the film was released in theaters, we were treated to the digital release entitled Jonah Hex Revenge Gets Ugly EP. It consisted of only 6 songs. 4 of those were new tracks, and 2 were alternative tracks of previously recorded songs.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Jonah Hex would release to theaters on June 18, 2010, the same day as Pixar's hugely successful threequel, Toy Story 3. Unfortunately, it would open in 7th place, grossing only $5 million on opening weekend. It would open behind the 3rd week of Get Into the Greek, 5th week of Shrek Forever After, and the 4th week of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. By its 3rd week, it got knocked down to 31st place, making a measly domestic box office run of $10 million on a budget that was consisting of $47 million. Because of this poor domestic run, it wouldn't release wide internationally. So, because of this, the film would only make less than $500,000 internationally. At the end of its theatrical run in August 2010, it would limp to a measly $10 million worldwide. Currently, the film holds a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the critic consensus stating, quote, "Josh Brolin gives it his best shot, but he can't keep the short, unfocused Jonah Hex from collapsing on screen," end quote. Critics weren't very kind to this film, with Tom Huddleston of Time Out saying, quote, "At 81 minutes with credits, Jonah Hex feels crude, lazy, and entirely perfunctory," end quote. Rafer Guzman of Newsday said, quote, "There's just one ingredient missing, anything with a clue," end quote. Through all the negativity, it's nice to see a few critics say something positive, such as Stephanie Zacharek of Movie Line. She would go on to say, quote, "Jonah Hex could be bigger, louder, and longer, with more special effects and faster cutting, but it errs on the side of simplicity, and to that, let's all raise a shot glass," end quote. Houston Film Critics Society would name it the worst picture of the year. It also garnered 2 Razzie nominations, including Worst Actress for Megan Fox and Worst Screen Couple for Josh Brolin's face and Megan Fox's accent.
Still got that Derringer in your bustle?
No, he took it.
What about that knife in your garter?
Took it.
What about that?
Took it all, Jonah.
Well, searched you for darn good, didn't they?
Wouldn't you?
Because Warner Brothers thought that the film would be a success, they released several toy lines with different toy manufacturers, including Toner Doll Company Inc., NECA, WizKids, and DC Direct. Each company made action figures and dolls of Jonah Hex, Lila, and Turnbull in their own unique ways. Funny enough, I've seen these toys turn up in random thrift stores for fairly reasonable prices. Just don't expect tons of people to be in bidding wars on eBay. Jonah Hex was released on DVD and Blu-ray on October 19, 2010. The Blu-ray would contain some decent features, including a picture-in-picture experience with director Jimmy Hayward. This would contain a variety of interviews with Josh Brolin, Megan Fox, John Malkovich, and other cast and crew. It's all standard fluff, and there never is anything stated about whether or not there were any production problems. There was also a nice feature entitled The Inside Story of Jonah Hex. It traces the history of our anti-hero, as well as his different incarnations and evolution to who he would become in 2010. There's also a small helping of deleted scenes, just in case you were itching to see what the studio approved to be released to the public.
You do yourself a favor. You stay ahead of death as long as you can, you hear?
Because I got plans for you.
Years later, Brolin would admit he hated the experience making this film, saying the production schedule was hectic and would blame the failure on studio interference as well as the end result on director Jimmy Hayward. Brolin said he was inexperienced and a bad choice for directing the film. He had wanted Park Chan-wook to direct and believed his version of Jonah Hex would have been closer to the film High Plains Drifter, which was how Brolin wanted it to look. Upon the release of the movie, Megan Fox wasn't happy about it. As the years have gone on, she would call it a decent movie, stating, quote, "While I shouldn't have been nominated for an Oscar, I'm definitely not bad in it," end quote.
Ain't safe here, Jonah. I'll be coming for you.
They always do.
Jonah Hex has its strengths and weaknesses. On the positive side, Brolin delivers a solid performance, capturing the grizzled, world-weary demeanor of the titular character, and the film's visual style effectively combines gritty Western aesthetics with supernatural elements. The costume design, particularly Hex's distinctive scar and wardrobe, is faithful to the comics, and the action sequences featuring unique weapons like twin guns and horse-mounted Gatling guns add an interesting twist to traditional Western shootouts. Additionally, the edgy soundtrack by Mastodon enhances the film's dark atmosphere and makes for a pretty good time, for your ears at least. However, the movie has significant drawbacks. The plot is disjointed and lacks depth, with rushed character motivations and poorly explained developments. At around 81 minutes, the film is too short to fully develop its story and characters, leaving it feeling incomplete. By the time you're ready to care about these characters and the plot, the movie's over. Most of these characters, including the villain, Quentin Turnbull, are underdeveloped. John Malkovich looks really bored in the role and doesn't offer anything truly engaging, which is something I wasn't expecting from him. The film also struggles with tone, fluctuating between dark, serious moments and campy, over-the-top action, which undermines the overall narrative. While the supernatural elements are intriguing, they often feel tacked on rather than integral to the story. So, what the f happened to Jonah Hex? Well, it failed to deliver on its potential due to a combination of factors. The film's weak plot, underdeveloped characters, and inconsistent tone led to poor critical and commercial reception. Extensive production issues, including rewrites, reshoots, and creative differences, contributed to its disjointed feel. As we stated, commercially, it was a huge flop, grossing only a fraction of its budget. And despite strong performances and a pretty visually appealing style, Jonah Hex couldn't overcome its fundamental flaws, ultimately becoming a cautionary tale in comic book film adaptations. As we stated in the beginning of the episode, we really hope James Gunn brings a fun and creative shift for the DCU. Characters that no one had heard about, such as the Guardians of the Galaxy, or the characters he brought to light in his version of the Suicide Squad, had become household names or were enjoyed by many people. Maybe James will give Jonah Hex a second chance and reinvigorate interest in the character. Hopefully he can deliver an exciting and memorable addition to the superhero and Western film genres alike.
If you get yourself into a jam, I imagine you can find me.